Hi, everyone, and happy August. I'm recording this on July 31st, but this is all for the August energy forecast. We've got so much stuff going on and lots of shifts and changes happening. I've been in a very quiet mode for most of July because I have been in a retreat mode. There's been so much shifting happening internally. As well, of course, as in our outer world. And so I've been in this hibernation mode and really integrating a lot of new energies coming in. But I wanted to talk about August because we are really in a very significant time frame right now. We had some crazy energies going on in July. The astrology was about as accurate as it could possibly be. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the events that we saw in July that were literally on point with the astrology. Sometimes the astrology can be very vague and there can be a lot of scenarios playing out. But this last month, we've had three major events that were literal. They were literal interpretations of what the astrology was saying. So that has been extremely interesting. The first one that we had was the Mars-Uranus-Argol conjunction that happened mid-month. And what was so interesting about that is that the Argol energy was about the head. It is about almost a penetration or a severing of the head. And it is very linked to head injuries, headaches, things like that. And it was funny because I had a friend reach out and say, I have a really bad headache today, the day that happened. And I was listening to another astrologer talk about the Argol energy. And when I was listening to this, I turned to my husband and I said, I think there's going to be something happening today as far as what actually ended up transpiring with the US presidential nominee. So that was a literal interpretation of the energy coming to fruition. The second one that we had was when Mars entered Gemini on July 20th, and there was a massive technology breakdown. Gemini rules our thoughts, our communications, our technology, and Mars is a great disrupting energy. It is one that kind of comes in, bolts into the situation and can cause a lot of disruption and chaos. And boy, did it cause a lot of disruption and chaos for a lot of people, especially if you were traveling during that period. So that was literal. And then the third one was the full moon in Capricorn. I had been talking about that for a while as it was leading up, and it was really an indication that we were closing a chapter and that we were turning a new leaf because we had the moon and Pluto in a conjunction. So Pluto is sitting in Aquarius, the moon sitting at 29 degrees Capricorn. Capricorn rules structures. It rules the political system, our banking institutions, all of those things. And then you have Pluto sitting at the first degree of Aquarius, which is about the new, bringing in new things, new ideas. And so it was really about this death and rebirth process. And of course, as we know, Joe Biden, stepped out of the race at that time and endorsed Kamala Harris, which is bringing about a totally new chapter as it relates, at least to the Democratic Party in the United States. So, there was a lot of shifts and changes happening. And I haven't really said this publicly, but I am going to say this, is I've been saying this to family members and some close friends. I have been feeling for some time that neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump were going to be the president of the United States, that neither one of them were going to get the job, and that there would be so many twists and turns leading up to it. I still feel as though, and I'm not seeing that we're going to have an election like of any traditional sorts. Whether we have an election or not, who knows? But I think we have a long road to go before we get to that point. And the astrology is showing that there is a ton of changes happening and a lot of twists and turns happening before we even get to November. So I would just say the big piece about this is to sit back, get your popcorn ready. Don't get really engaged in it at a level where you're emotionally invested in it, because I really feel as though anything is possible, and there's so much other energies coming in at this point that are not real, like in our reality, not in the third dimensional stuff, that we could be seeing major shifts from a much higher perspective that could be impacting all of us. So only time is going to tell, and we'll see where that goes. So as we start working and through August, we have so much happening as we're entering this phase. There is a large amount of activity going on, not only in the Schumann resonance, where we are seeing these massive spikes of energy coming in, and then we're having these days of integration. So that's going on pretty much, it's been every other day. We've had almost a full body blast in the last week. Then we'll have an integration day, then another full body blast, and then an integration day. So we know that there are changes happening within the core, the heartbeat of the earth itself. There are massive changes happening there. But the sun, again, is having a massive activation. And we have so many spots that have turned back earth facing in the last few days, especially over the weekend, that we're having multiple M class. We did have an X class flare, but we're having multiple M class flares every day. And so that is producing a lot more light, a lot more energy on this planet. And then you combine that with just where we are in the calendar year. So for those of us in North America, we are in the depths of summer. We are in the heat of summer. So our physical bodies are heating up, and just the environment is heating up. So when we get overheated, tempers tend to flare up. We tend to have a short fuse. We tend to not be able to really handle things very well because we are overheated. For those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, you're having probably the opposite thing, which is where you're needing to warm your body up. So for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we need to cool it down a bit. For those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, it's about a warming up process of the physical structure itself. So there is a release valve that needs to happen, especially for those of us who are going through this heat, the summer heat right now. We need to have a release valve to let out some of that steam. And otherwise it can bubble over. Otherwise we can have a very negative effect on us personally and our relationships, but also collectively. And the 7-7 portal that we had in July 7th, that's always kind of an opening piece for, I would call, higher connection to happen, because it really is tied into that 7th chakra. We are approaching the 888 portal, which is extremely significant because it is an 8 year. So we have an 8 day of the 8th month of the 8 year. And I've talked a lot about this being a karmic cleanup year for the collective. 8 is about power struggles. 8 is about strength. It is about able to move mountains, but it's also about karma, and it holds a lot of karmic energy with it. And so as we are hitting that 888 portal and it's connecting with the galactic center, we are opening a whole can of worms as it relates to our karmic debt. And I know many of you have been working on clearing out your karmic debt. This started intensely last summer, lots of relationships being let go. That was the big theme of last summer. Unfortunately, we have another round of that coming up August, September, October again of this year, because Venus is playing a role, but we also have Chiron playing another role this year, as it is in Aries. It is conjunct our collective North Node in Aries, and Chiron's going to be retrograding. So we're going to go back over a lot of those relationships we let go of, and our wounds. We're going to have a re-review. And for some, this is going to be okay because you've done the work. For others, this may be quite a challenging time because you're digging back into those wounds again and having to go back over them. So just expect that there is another big energetic opening and shift where a lot of that shadow energy could be bubbling up to the surface, and we could see the worst of humanity versus the best of humanity. But if we're conscious of it and we choose a higher timeline, we choose to go down the path of love, of forgiveness, of healing, then we can have a radical shift for all of us moving forward. So something to keep in mind. Okay, so this month, let me get a drink of water. This month, I have really been in this hibernation mode. So I've closed off on purpose a lot of my channeling pieces. So I have not been channeling, and I just generally in the past have not shared a lot of channeling stuff, even though that's one of the things that I do. But I had really kind of turned it down and asked not to be disturbed for a while because I was going through such a lot of recalibration in the last year, especially. But they've kind of been asking me to come back in. And again, as we lead up to this 888 portal, the galactic center connection and the opening has gotten stronger. And so I'm pretty much channeling every day now. One of the things that I did this month, which is a little different, is I was tuning in more to the collective energy and channeling what was coming through for the collective. So there's really 4 big themes that came through for the month of August. And I think this aligns very nicely. I did the channeling first, and then I went in and looked at the astrology. And so it really aligns very well with what astrologically is going on this month. So the first big theme that came through was the theme of volatility. As I was saying, we are in a time right now where things are very much heating up. And I feel as though we are at a turning point and a very pivotal time because of that pressure cooker energy is at the forefront. And the thing that I kept being shown was diamonds. Diamonds are created under a lot of pressure. And then because of that, they can withstand a lot, right? They do not tend to break or have problems because they are produced under that pressure scenario. And this is really the energy that I'm seeing, is that we have to feel the pressure in order for our diamond blueprint to emerge. And not only are we, seeing a lot of seismic changes in the collective mindset, right? But I think that we're also going to see seismic activity as it relates to the earth itself. There is a lot of cracks within our foundation, and the foundation cracks are actually widening up. And what I have seen is that there's a lot of splits on the earth, and that is very prone to seismic activity happening. That's prone to a lot of steam needing to be released, a lot of fires starting, a lot of rattling and shaking of ourselves and of the earth itself. I think that as we are starting to shake and rattle and emerge in different forms, Mother Earth is also going through her own process as well. So as our bodies are warming, as we need this release valve, so does Mother Earth. She needs a release valve as well. And I think that this can be definitely going to be seen as it relates to some of these activities that we could see with fires, with volcanic activity, with types of earthquakes happening. I know that in St. Louis recently, the National Guard was there training because along the Mississippi River area, there is a massive potential for an earthquake. This is the new Madrid fault line. It is way overdue for an eruption. And if we get anything of size there, that could cause a huge problem. And I hope it doesn't happen, but it certainly is possible, I think, at this time. I also see that the rattling and the shaking is helping to wake people up. And I keep seeing the words wake up, wake up, wake up coming. And it's almost as though you're asleep and you have to be shaken awake in order to really see what's happening. Instead of being in the dream state, we've got to be in another state. And so this is a big theme. This theme of volatility is huge for the month of August. I wanted to say October, August. So the second big theme that came through was the theme around illusions. Many of us are starting to receive these visions or these downloads of what I would say is our higher self or our true self. And what's happening is we're getting a little bit more clarity every day. Now, this is probably only going to be very much for a small collective that's listening to this, but it feels as though these little parts and pieces are coming in and they're starting to lock into our structures. And with that type of a shift, the things that we've been accustomed to living our lives in this human experience could feel very misaligned. And as we become more embodied with our higher self, those gaps can feel a lot bigger. There's almost what they showed me was almost a hall of mirrors going on. And so we're only right now able to start to see slivers of the full picture. We're getting tricklings of that. But the mirrors also represented a lot of illusions, a lot of things that are hidden, a lot of trickery energy that's still going on. And so there's a lot of discernment that's going to be needed to understand what's really the truth, what's reality, and what's not reality. And that can be very difficult, especially if you're a very empathic person, because if you're tuned into the energies and you're seeing things that not a lot of other people can see, you start to question your own sanity in some ways, because you're like, okay, I'm seeing all of this stuff. Why is nobody else seeing these things, right? And I always talk about the fact that everything has a frequency and everything has a vibration. And unfortunately, if you are not able to go into that frequency or vibration, you're not going to be able to see it. If you are able to adjust your energy field to go into a different frequency or vibration, then you will be able to connect in with that energy. And it's just like channeling, right? It's being able to tune your frequency to a different radio station in order to receive downloads or contact with other types of energies. So that can be a little bit tricky for sure. But one thing to keep in mind is that it's really important to have a solid foundation. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're walking on quicksand. And when you do feel like you're walking on quicksand, things can come, loose underneath you. The foundation can crumble underneath your feet. So one of the key things about all of this is to step back, be in a place of quiet, being in a place where you can look at things from a higher perspective and really just let things unfold naturally versus trying to force it, trying to think that everything is real, because not everything is real, and really just let things play out the way that they need to play out. So that's the second big theme, is illusions. The third theme is around awakening. And this is around, again, this higher self is starting to come in. It's starting to anchor in. And one of the things that I have been shown is that a lot of us have been in this slumbering state, this sleeping state. And it is a lot like the Wizard of Oz, when the house gets picked up by the tornado and then it lands in Oz, and it goes from this black and white film to this Technicolor film. And that is what I am seeing. Now, I've had many experiences over the years where I've had like what I would call a mini upgrade or a mini awakening happening. And I always can tell them this happens because I usually have an adjustment to my eyes, my physical eyes happening, where things get very blurry for a while. But then I go outside and everything is in like these hyper colors, like the Technicolor stuff. And you start to notice things that you don't normally notice. You're much more tuned into the trees or the animals or the birds or anything else that is out in nature. And so this is what I'm seeing, is that this is going to create more people, amount of more people having this sort of upgrade experience, like what I talked about, where everything looks completely different to them. So it's a really beautiful thing when it happens, though. I love it. I love it when I get these little mini upgrades and this happens, because I have such a deeper connection with nature. I start to feel more things around me, either angels or higher realm beings are coming in, or light beings are coming in. So I think that that is opening a opportunity for us to have deeper connection and contact with other beings. And also, I would not be surprised if we start to have more mass awareness of unidentified flying objects or other types of technologies or experiences with beings that are in a different frequency. So the key with all of this, of course, is to keep your heart open, stay calm, stay in peace, stay in love, because these are going to be some more radical shifts that we're going to have within the collective consciousness as more and more people are beginning to really awaken. And then the last theme that came through was around New Earth leaders. So obviously we have a massive power shift happening that we can see within the third dimensional place. It's very public. Obviously, there's a lot of different political things happening. The UK just had a big election. France had an election and is undergoing some big changes. South Africa. And of course, all eyes will be on the United States as we inch closer to November. But there's also a shift in what I would consider leadership on maybe some things that we can't necessarily see in those type of structures. As the structures begin to shift, as we have more cracks on the foundation, as we realize that we've got to make some pretty radical changes collectively in order to make things work for the whole versus just a few, we are going to see an emergence of more New Earth leaders coming forward. There's many of you who just know in your heart and your bones, you just know that you are here for a very important purpose. And it has maybe perhaps felt a little bit like a waiting game, or you may have felt a little bit lost, not knowing when this was actually going to happen, that we're going to have a change, but you've just been waiting in the wings. And so a lot of this activation stuff that's going on right now is that there's a lot of codes of remembrance coming in, and you guys are holding blueprints, you're holding the maps of the implementation plans. And so those things are going to come forward, because a part of this is that you are the architects of the new earth, that we just have to wait a little bit longer in order to have those things start to really emerge. But it doesn't mean that you aren't needed in this present moment. So one of the other messages I got was specifically for those of you who relate to this message There are different roles that each of us are playing at this time that are very, very important, but they are very different. And so if you resonate with being a grid worker or a light holder, the message I was receiving was all hands need to be on deck at this point, that there have been codes that have been transmitted over to you. And it's now at this time that we need you to be out and about doing the grid work, that it is time now to actually implement those codes. There is a network of you that are connected, and you're going to know exactly what to do. You're going to know exactly where to go, and you're being divinely guided in order to place yourself in the areas that need you at this time. The other group that I received information about were those that identify as a lighthouse. You are essentially an anchor. You're anchored into a certain area of the world. And right now it is your job to amplify your light. So doing a daily practice, imagining your light expanding out over your area of where you live, but also making sure that you're getting out of the house, that you are actually interacting. You don't have to actually go talk to people, but just going to the grocery store, maybe going to a restaurant, getting out and about. I just went out to lunch today, and it was funny because before I left, I was like, I need to go back to the restroom. And when I was walking back there, they said, we're having you clear and actually transfer codes to people as you're walking by them. So you never know exactly what is going on, but just trust the process and really listen to your inner guidance around these things. There's a lot of you that are also pulling in ancient codes right now and wisdom into your system. So if you're more if you relate to more being a star being, those things are activating and unlocking, and it's holding lots of information and codes from your planet of origin. So those are coming in for some of you. And then the last group is very important. These are the awakeners. These are the teachers. These are the guides. And what I was receiving is that because of the shaking and people really getting rattled, there's going to be an influx of people coming to you at this time. So your assisting others is very important because they will be seeking out assistance and help. They don't know what to do. They're just starting to awaken. So if you think back to even your own journey and when you started to have these kind of awakening things and you were looking for information and you were looking for people to assist you, that's what's going to be happening on a broader scale. So if you are training people, great. You've got the tools, fantastic. Remember, it's not your responsibility to carry people over the finish line. It is their responsibility, but you are a beacon of light on their path, and you can walk alongside of them for a little bit of time to assist them, and then they are able to move on from there. So just know you're very much needed. And I think you'll be starting to see an increase of assistance needed by more and more people. There were a couple of cards I pulled for the collective at this time as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So the first card that came through was the Four of Pentacles. As you can see, she's holding a money bag kind of tightly around her. And this is going to be an interesting part of the collective energy because I've been receiving a lot around the financial systems, and the energy for August is definitely showing us that there's some bubbling up in August and September around our financial systems. And this can be extremely scary for a lot of people because when we talk about our money, we're so tied into our money. And we don't always think about it as an energy. We think of it as an actual thing, but it is energy. And not having a deep connection to that or feeling tied into it is really important at this time. This card's basically saying you have more than enough, that you will be provided for, that everything will come into play exactly the way it needs to come into play, and that you got to trust and surrender in the process. Again, these financial systems are shifting, especially as Pluto begins to roll back into Capricorn. It's in retrograde right now, and it's going to push itself back. Now, when Pluto came into Capricorn was in 2008. And that is when we had the housing and financial crisis of 2008, where the banks were bailed out by the government. We had another mini incident of this happening in March of 2023, when Capricorn was at its final degree of Capricorn at 29 degrees, when Pluto was in Capricorn at 29 degrees. And some of those regional banks began to fail. So this is absolutely possible with these energies. I feel as though there could be a pretty significant shift. And I was listening to Steve Jed this morning regarding his take on the August energies and the rest of this year. And he's also astrologically seeing that there's a massive shift in the financial systems this year. I'm hoping, what I'm seeing is that it's almost a reshuffling, and it's a rebalancing of those energies around our financial system, and that the money that we know and how we interact with money is going to change its value. The value system around it is going to change in a pretty dramatic way. So these type of things, when you talk about it, can cause a lot of panic, because I was talking to my husband about this today, and he's a worrywart, and he really was starting to, I could sense that the anxiety was starting to perk up for him. And I had to remind him that, if we do have a shift, it's going to affect everyone equally. And it's not going to be some pick and choose situation. It will be a broader thing. So just be on the lookout for that. Don't feed into the fear. Don't feed into it. Stay neutral about it. But just be aware that there are shifts energetically that are in the forecast around our financial systems. The second card that came up was around temperance. So this kind of leans into exactly what I was talking about. Temperance is about patience. It's about groundedness. It's about balancing out these two energies. As you can see, there's two different spheres here, and there's a rebalancing, a recalibration going on within this energy. It's also showing us there's angel wings behind us, that we are divinely protected and we are divinely guided, and not to stress out about stuff, right? It's about using discernment. It's about surrendering. It's about trusting, but it's always about looking inward to rebalance your energies, staying in the neutral mind versus going into the negative mind or the over positive mind, which is trying to keep the negative mind at bay. So staying balanced. Our temperament needs temperance. And then the last card I pulled was the Hierophant card. This is really about how you are your own guru, how you are your own master, and that there are people on your path to assist you, but that really you need to turn inward and be able to look inside yourself for the answers. You have everything already inside of you. And it's about discernment as well, making sure that you are using your own intuition, your own discernment when it comes to the news and information. Again, the outer world's going to get noisier. The information's going to get increased, there's a lot of illusions around the information that we are receiving. And so this is going to be extremely important to continue to trust yourself. You know exactly what you need for you. And your path is going to look completely different than anybody else's. No two paths are alike. And so you've got to go inward to really focus on this. Okay. Everything's coming into play. Everything's coming into focus, and it's all right in front of you. And then the last card I pulled was the card of purity. And I love this because it's a right on time, as it is reminding us to come back to our own innocence, to make sure we are having fun, that we are playing, that this is all a game, that you're in a play and you can play your part really, really well, or you can let other people manipulate your play. So dip into that childlike spirit, have fun, try to be in awe about everything around you. It's that awakening energy where everything's in technicolor and you're like, oh my gosh, look at the flowers and look at the butterflies, and you're just in awe of life around you. So really try and honor your time here. It's very important. It's the greatest time to be on earth, really. I know it's weird to be like, I signed up for this. I can't believe I signed up for this, but you did. And it's the greatest time to be here. And you are part of it. So like, how exciting is that you get to actually be a part of all of these amazing things that are happening. So congratulations. It's going to get really fun, really fast. All right. So we talked about July's energy and those 3 key dates. I will say there's a couple more things I'm going to point out about the July energy. So Mercury entered Virgo, which is great because it's in its native placement. This is going to bring a little bit of time, not much, because we're going into a retrograde, but just a little bit more organization around our thoughts and our communications. But we are in the shadow period for this Mercury retrograde that will start on August 4th. So we've only had a little bit of time where everything's clear and free. The other thing that I want to talk about is Chiron going retrograde in Aries. So Chiron is the wounded warrior, and it has been in a conjunction with our collective North Node in Aries for almost all of this year. I think all of this year. I don't know the exact date, but I know it's been this year. So a lot of what we've been doing is we've been releasing our personal wounds. We have been digging deeper under the surface to let go of the pain and the hurt that we have been carrying, not only in this lifetime, but for many lifetimes before. And in Chiron and Aries is really about our personal wounding, but it's also got a theme of hurt people. And so much of what we've been asked to do is how can we let go and forgive people who've hurt us? And how do we take the higher perspective? How do we take the higher road? How do we take the road of peace and love and harmony and forgiveness over hate and attacking and harming other people? And so as we go through this retrograde cycle, a lot of this is about how much more healing do you have to do? It's going to go back and revisit a lot of things. And this was really big last summer because Chiron and Venus were in retrograde late summer into the fall. And some of you have had a lot of relationship shifts happening in this last year. That is continuing. And it's a big theme of August, September, October of this year as well. So the big key here is, can you take the high road? Can you take the road of forgiveness? And can you move forward without going to battle with other people? So that will be a big one. All right, so let's talk about just the key astrological dates for August. So August 4th, Mercury is going to go into retrograde in the sign of Virgo. It will stay there for a little bit, and then it's going to retrograde back into Leo. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. We also on the 4th have a new moon in Leo, and this is a really nice energy. This should be a pretty good day in general, because Leo is about our creative side, our childlike spirit, our romantic life, how we want to lead in this world. And so there's a lot of really beautiful energy that is coming forward to really set intentions that day. We also have Venus moving into Virgo that day. So there is a lot of refinement around our personal value system, our finances, our romantic life, how we give and receive love. So we will be looking a little bit at that. The Mercury retrograde energy, to me, at least while it's in Virgo, is a little bit more of that fine tooth comb, like making sure you're really going over the details before you send out communication, any of those things. We need to really be consciously aware of that. So something to keep in mind. August 8th, we have the 888 portal. Again, massive energetic day, not astrological day, but massive energetic day, just because of all the dynamics at play. It is an 8-year. It is a portal that's opening up. It's connected to the galactic center. So lots of movement and activity are slated for around that day, if not that day. On August 14th, Mars in Gemini is going to be conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. This could be a little bit of a crazy day. Jupiter expands everything it touches. Mars brings very direct type of energy, forceful energy, and Gemini is our place of communication, of technology, of our thinking. And so we could have some heated arguments that day. We could have possibly some technological breakdowns. I don't know. I just keep getting a feeling like the financial system, we may have more technical glitches, which we saw in mid-July. There's something around this that feels like it could be a little dicey energy. So something to just be aware of. The next day on August 15th, Mars in Gemini squares Saturn in Pisces. Again, this can cause a little bit more of that illusion energy, not being able to see things super clearly. Saturn is in a retrograde right now in Pisces, and while it's been helping to pull back the veils, Pisces is a little bit of a tricky energy because sometimes it can see through the illusions, but there's other times it can't. And so we could have a little bit of cloudy judgment that day within those energies. So again, causing some disruption. Now, the next week, we have a pretty big event in the United States, and that's the Democratic National Convention. And that's starting on August 19th. On August 18th, the day before the convention begins, Mercury is going to be in Leo retrograding in a square with Uranus and Taurus. Uranus, the planet of disruption and chaos, in the sign of what's our embodiment of our earth, of our material possessions, of our financial pieces. I think there can be a lot of disruption and drama around what's going to happen. So I don't know. It's just going to be, it's going to be interesting. There could be a lot of unfocusedness, confusion, and not a great energy moving into this convention to start with. Now, we may not have anything. I mean, everybody was talking about the Mars-Uranus-Argyle conjunction being a total disruptor for the RNC. The RNC convention didn't seem to have much of a thing. Now, the days leading up to it, though, were very interesting. And we could have the same sort of situation where the days leading up to the convention can be a little chaotic, and then the convention may be fine. However, though, the next day when it starts, there is a full moon in Aquarius. This is the blue moon, I believe. It's a super moon. And it's going to be interesting because this Aquarian energy with this full moon, while we're letting things go, Aquarius is the disruptor. It wants new earth. It wants a whole new approach to how we do things. And we may see a little bit of a push-pull with the old guard versus a new guard. And we may see some splitting of factions within the Democratic Party itself, where you have a group that is very much in the new consciousness, wanting to push things forward, wanting to bring these new earth ideas to the forefront, versus this Capricornian structured energy of old, wanting to hold on to the systems and the traditions. So this can get really, I think, very, very interesting as far as what could actually take place at the convention. August 22nd, we enter Virgo mansion. So again, this can, it's going to bring a little bit more groundedness back into our systems because it is back in an earth sign. However, there is a square from Venus and Virgo to Mars and Gemini that day. Again, bringing emotions to the forefront and possible conflict in our relationships. So that masculine and that feminine energy is at odds. On August 24th, Vesta will enter Virgo, which gives us much more of a focus on our physical systems and how they're operating. So you may find yourself really turning your attention to your own health and well-being. On August 28th, Mercury retrograde it ends as far as the retrograde. It starts to go direct in Leo. But we will still have a shadow period for a couple weeks after that can still cause some issues. And then on August 29th, Venus will enter Libra. Thank goodness. It is the native sign for Venus. It's not like it's super uncomfortable in Virgo, but it has a little bit too much restriction there. So back home in Libra, it will feel very nice. But there is a trine going on with Pluto and Aquarius, which means we could be unearthing some things about our relationships at that time. And that will be part of the eclipse season that's coming up in September and October. Again, we're going to look back to last year. What were we closing out? What relationships were we clearing? What karmic relationships were we closing out? What contracts were we wrapping up with people? Again, this is another review of all of that. Plus, you're also doing more refining about your current relationships and seeing who's going to make the cut this time to move forward and who aligns with your higher self, that mission, that soul family that really a lot of us are calling in at this time, versus maybe acquaintances and stuff that you've had around but are no longer in the same mindset that you are. So expect some probably sudden and abrupt changes to your relationships. So this is all leading up to September, and September is going to start off with a bang because literally on September 1st, Uranus is going to go retrograde in Taurus. Again, another purging of relationships, ideas, patterns, a lot of stuff tied to the actual earth itself. So that disruptive energy in Taurus, it's been shaking down the foundations. Now it's going to retrograde. And the same day, Pluto then moves back to 29 degrees of Capricorn. Again, this is a rattling and a re-examination of these structures, like the government structures, the financial structures that are going to come to the forefront. Again, this would be the time, if we look back at when Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008 and we had a financial crisis. If we look back at March 2023, when Capricorn was in the final degrees, Pluto was in the final degrees of Capricorn at 29 degrees, and we had a little mini meltdown. I again feel like we've got some major shifts within our financial systems coming up. And so again, groundedness, making sure that you're staying within your space, really not getting pulled in. One of the big things that came through from my guides was about how do you stay in 0 point? How do you go into a place of neutrality? How do you drop the attachment to things, money, or ideas about how something should be or how something should go, like all of those things? And how can you find that balanced state of the inner and outer worlds that you live in? So I think that we are definitely in a pivot point. We are in a major transitional point, and all we can do is sit back, stay within, do the inner work, and get your popcorn ready. It should be a fun time. Anyway, I wish you all the very best and the happiest of August. And yeah, we're just in this together and watching the show. Take care.